In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what I did, the challenges that people are reluctant to talk about, and whether I think that you should do it too. So before I tried keto, there were a lot of other diets that I had tried beforehand. This wasn't the very first thing that I did. I'd been in a position where I was feeling frustrated. I'd been out of shape for a very long time, and despite my best efforts with trying to improve the way that I was eating, making healthier choices, going to the gym, I just wasn't seeing any progress. And I think actually in hindsight, what I was doing back then was all very sporadic. I wasn't actually looking at how much I was eating, but that got me to that point where I decided to reach out to a coach, and I'd really hit rock bottom. I was drinking alcohol a lot. It had really become quite excessive. I was at a stage where almost every single weekend I was throwing up from hangovers, and I'd hit rock bottom and decided that enough was enough and I really wanted to change. I kept seeing all these transformations online of people that had this physique that I desperately wanted. I was so lacking in confidence. I really hated the way that I looked and how that made me feel in terms of wanting to put myself out there. At the time I was single, and I just thought, I'm gonna hire this coach. It was this brand that was getting results constantly. They were posting all these before and after pictures, and I thought there must be this secret that they know there's something that I'm not doing. So I thought, literally, whatever they tell me to do, I'm just gonna sign up. I'm gonna put my name on the dotted line, and I'll do whatever I think it takes to get me to that level and get that result. So they sent me this plan. It was a 3-month plan, and I was looking back actually before I started to record this video at some of the targets they sent over. So at the time I weighed about 80 kilograms and I had a calorie target of 1,700 and a protein target of 170 grams and a fat target of 75 grams. And then for carbohydrates, all that I was allowed to have was adding veg to my meals. So everything else had to come from either protein or fats, but there was no option for me to add carbohydrates in. That was strictly off limits. So this was very much a keto focused plan. So as well as those targets I had around food, this coach set me quite high activity level targets as well. I had to hit an average of 15,000 steps per day, and I had to train 4 times per week. It was 2 upper body sessions, 2 lower body sessions, and on top of that I had to do 60 minutes worth of cardio too. And looking back at the email that the coach sent me when he first sent out this plan, he put, and it was almost a quote for word for word, that I needed to have a no excuses approach, and if I wanted to be one of these people that could go through one of these 12-week transformations and see big changes, I just needed to follow everything by the letter, have no excuses or anything at all as to why I couldn't do it, and to just literally go out and get the work done. So I just thought, you know what, I'm so deeply unhappy with where I'm at right now, I will literally do anything. So for breakfast, I was having a protein shake, so a whey or vegan protein shake, and then I would have with that something like 15 almonds, or I would also have maybe 4 or 5 Brazil nuts. So it was literally, breakfast was just protein and fats. And then the goal of this plan was to be eating between 4 and 5 meals a day. I don't think my calories are really high enough to get to 5, so I had 4 meals programmed and a protein shake as well. So at 11 a.m. I would have chicken, which was just seasoned, and then as well as the chicken I would have kale and green beans, and I was just adding a bit of Nando's sauce to essentially make it palatable and actually enjoyable, if that's the right choice of word. And then at about 2 to 3 p.m, because I think if I was trying to wait too long on those calories, I was just becoming really hungry. So 2 to 3 p.m, I would have a similar meal. So I would have 5% fat beef mince, and then with that I would have carrots and peppers, or carrots. It was mostly carrots and green beans. I think I was focusing a lot on green veg at the time. Not that it really makes a huge difference. So I was rotating to those 3 meals. I would have the protein shake and the almonds, and then I would have the chicken and green beans and kale, and then the 5% mince and carrots and green beans or whatever it was. And then just for the last meal, I would either have the chicken and the mince again, and literally that was it on repeat. So every Sunday I would spend about 2 to 3 hours, and I would literally cook about 20 meals. So I had the equivalent of 3 meals per day already made up, and I would just put them all in the freezer and then get them out the day before to defrost, so that I was just cycling through these meals and I never had to prep anything, I never had to cook anything. It was literally all done for the week on a Sunday, prepped out for me. And that approach just made it a lot easier to stick with it, to stay compliant. I never had that sort of temptation to go for things that are off plan because the meals were there and ready for me, but it was very, very strict. I remember being about 6 weeks into the plan and saying to my coach, you know, I've been super on it, I've been really focused, am I allowed to have one off-plan cheat meal? And he was like, absolutely not, you've got to go all in on this and just stick with it, it's too early. So that was quite hard work, but I was noticing that my weight was coming down very quickly. I was starting to see physical changes, and that was probably the first time in my life where I'd actually been at a point where I was noticing that my body fat was starting to come down. So where I was seeing those results, I was then becoming more committed to that process, but it was extremely restrictive. There was literally no leeway for any snacks, any events, anything whatsoever. For that whole period from week 0 to week 12, I was literally 100% in, and I mean 100%, to get everything done from the steps, the cardio, the workouts and the food, because I just really wanted to see those changes as quickly as possible. And the method that they programmed for that was those calories and cutting the carbs out, so I was just going to go for it. So the results were, quite frankly for me, life-changing. I was at this point where in an incredibly short period of time, I had a physique which I never thought was possible. I'd never ever looked this way before in my entire life. I could see abs, definition, tone, veins. So I was feeling incredibly happy with the results. I think upon reflection, looking at that, like I said, there was a huge amount of sacrifice involved to get there. And looking and speaking to a lot of people about when they've tried keto in the past, I think the thing with this approach is when you look at fat loss, when you look at weight loss, generally for 99% of people, maybe more, I would say that fast doesn't last. And whilst I lost the weight, I saw the physical changes, it was really important that I had support in terms of what to do next, because ultimately that way of eating that was so restrictive, that was focused on being 100% in, is not something that you can do long term. And I think the issue a lot of people have with something like keto is, yes, absolutely it does work, it gets you a result, but the problem is what comes after that. Because if you have a diet that gets you a result, but then you can't stick with that long term, you've got no plan for what comes next, then for a lot of people, all that's going to happen is that weight ends up coming back on. So if it's the question of would I recommend keto, a lot of times the answer is actually no. And I would recommend, although I saw these results really quickly in 12 weeks, I knew what it took to get there. And in a lot of cases, it's not worth it. And people don't want to live like that. People don't want to make that level of sacrifice. And for a lot of people, they can't make that level of sacrifice because they've got family, they've got kids, they've got work events. It's just not realistic. So would I recommend it? Not necessarily. I think the other thing with keto as well is that it's not actually the keto that works. It's the fact that when you cut out carbohydrates, which is the real sort of main focus with keto, is you just end up cutting out a lot of the crap foods that you were eating that were causing the problems in the first place. So it's not the fact that you're doing keto that's getting you the results. It's the fact that you're no longer eating that, you know, bagel in the morning, or the croissant, or not necessarily that bagels are bad, but you're not having that croissant, you're not having that bag of crisps, you're not having those biscuits, because keto doesn't let you, but actually it's just cutting out those snacks that you were having before that's the reason why you're getting those results. So for a lot of people, you could actually still keep the carbohydrates in, go for a less regimented, a less restrictive approach, but just look to reduce the amount of snacking, the amount of treats that you're having, amending your portion sizes, and you could see equally as good results. I promise you can, because I've done it myself. I've done it with clients further down the line, because these results I've shown you, they were 6 years ago, and I've made a lot of progress in that time frame of building up my weight, cutting back down, getting even leaner than I was, and I did not cut out carbs the other times that I did it. So keto absolutely is not the only way to go. If you want to see results, you do not need to do it. It is just a method that does work. However, it is often too restrictive for a lot of people to stick to, and that's what you've got to consider. It's not, will this get me a result? Because the answer is very likely yes, if you stick with it long enough. It's what happens after I get that result. Can I sustain it? And is this going to work for me, my lifestyle, the commitments that you have as an individual? And that's the question you've got to answer, because you go out and you look for these diet plans online and you think, well, I can see this worked for this person, why doesn't it work for me? But if you are, for example, a parent who's got 2 kids, and you're looking at this 25-year-old who's single, no children, and did this diet, and you know, they don't have an office job, whatever, their circumstances might be completely different to yours. So yes, it worked for them, and it isn't that the diet didn't work for you, it's just that the diet didn't actually fit into your lifestyle and your circumstances. So that's the question you've got to ask yourself. Keto will 100% work, but like I said, fast doesn't last. And for most people, you'd be far better off taking a slower approach, not cutting everything out, but picking a diet that you can actually stick with and enjoy long term. If you have any questions about your diet, pop it in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer, and make sure you hit subscribe to keep an eye out for more content like this.